Hi, Dr. Cora Stack here again. I just wanted to provide listeners and viewers with an update from the Supreme Court that I've just recently received. And I just want to talk a little bit about constitutional principle and why this matters. Hello, everyone. I want to provide a clear and important update regarding my application before the Supreme Court. I have now received further clarification from the Registrar's Office. The court has confirmed that no determination has been made in my application, and instead, what they have decided to do is that the matter has been adjourned pending the delivery of judgment in Byrne versus Tánaiste and others. What this indicates is the court has decided to deal with the two matters in sequence, addressing the first, the Byrne appeal first. Now, his case was in the Supreme Court, a number of weeks before mine. So and then his case was the first to be adjudicated upon in the lower court. So that there's a logical sequence there as well. And then consideration my application afterwards. So once the judgment is delivered in Byrne, my application will be, as I understand it, forwarded to a panel of the court for determination. Importantly, there has been no refusal and no adverse ruling. My application remains active. It will be considered in due course and assessed on its own merits in light of the legal position as clarified, as I understand it, by the Byrne decision. So I welcome that procedural clarity. But I also want to step back and explain why this case matters more broadly. I mean, I've put a huge amount of effort into this. As anybody maybe who's following the work on YouTube, I mean, it's been kind of 24/7, night and day. Well, not 24/7, but it's incredibly intensive, very difficult work in terms of getting to this level of understanding. I mean, this level of constitutional law is extremely complex and very, very challenging intellectually. Very, very interesting, but very challenging, very demanding intellectually. So the issues raised here are not confined to Ireland. I mean, this is really why I suppose I put so much work into this, because it's a global. Really, we're dealing with global issues. Across constitutional democracies around the world, ordinary citizens are increasingly expressing concerns about institutional accountability, transparency, and the integrity of government systems. I won't say everybody is saying this, but there is a huge number of people saying what people in Ireland are saying in many, many Western democracies. A hierarchy is necessary in any complex democracy. Courts, legislatures, executive bodies, they must operate within structured systems of authority and accountability. But authority must remain constrained. It should be transparent. It should be reviewable. It must remain meaningfully contestable. In my research, I've been examining the gradual normalisation of structural conflicts of interest within modern institutions. Not dramatic corruption, not headline scandals, but something more subtle, more hidden. When conflicts of interest definitions become narrow, when enforcement cultures are weak. I mean, this is something I'm very concerned about. When recusal standards are discretionary, and also when accountability depends largely on self-disclosure. I mean, usually that requires a cultural shift, and we're always hearing we need a cultural shift there in the culture, but it's not happening because because of there isn't sufficient correction, and there isn't sufficient support for those who do the right thing. In my opinion, when procedural thresholds become very high or arbitrarily high, over time, authority can drift towards forms that are insufficiently constrained. It's not about attacking institutions, it's about strengthening them. Because when accountability mechanisms weaken gradually, which is exactly what's happening, this is how I would see the whole thing to be doing with the weakening of accountability mechanisms across all institutions and bodies. So, public trust erodes gradually. This is what's happening. The public trust erodes gradually. And this is happening all over Western constitutional democracies. And when trust erodes, democratic stability becomes very fragile. We're also, at the same time, entering an era, the AI revolution, as I call it, of increased algorithmic governance, where institutional decisions and historical patterns feed into automated systems. I mean, there's no point in saying that we're not all already, in the AI revolution. Decisions are being made, and we are being affected, and we do not know how much conflict of interest are in those algorithms. I'm convinced that there hasn't been enough, compliance with conflict of interest bias in the algorithms. I feel that's weak again, very weak. I'm already sensing it, and I'm sure other people are as well. If structural conflicts are not examined carefully now, those patterns risk become embedded and scaled by technology. I would already say that we have structural conflicts of interest already in a lot of policies and procedures. You could even say laws, acts, and so on. But if they are put into automated systems, that's going to be amplified and magnified hugely. So the conflict of interest issue is huge. So that's why I'm examining it, because it's of critical importance, and it's going to get worse if when it's embedded in policies, institutions, laws, things like that can be done very, very subtly. But if it's in the AI, all the AI algorithms, I mean, it is a very serious impact on democracy, and we're really not up to speed on this yet. So this is why I'm examining it myself now, and it's going to take me a while to get up to speed on the AI, how it's going to impact. And I don't hear so many people talking about conflict of interest in AI. So this case concerns separation of powers, democratic constraint, and institutional integrity, issues that resonate far beyond Ireland. So they're global issues. I mean, I suppose if you were a court looking at my case, you'd feel completely overwhelmed. I mean, it's huge. But I was like that when I first looked at it. But I've been gradually narrowing it because it's like doing a theorem. Like one of my first theorems was 50 pages, and I kept reducing it, and then I got it down to sort of like 6. And like I got it from 50 to 6, and people, would say, oh, that was only 6 pages. If that was 50 pages, it would have been a much better theorem. No, it was a far better theorem in 6 pages and it had a far more effect on several other intellectuals and professors around the world used it in the 5 or 6 pages than it would have had in the 50 pages. So this is, but that process took me a number of years. That process of reducing, and that's what I'm trying to do now. I'm trying to reduce take all the noise out of the information, reduce it down to 4 questions. So that has taken me months and months. So I'm using the same kind of methodology as I did in my PhD thesis. I had a theorem of 50 pages, and when I ended up sending it to the publishers, a big journal, the Pacific, one of the best journals in the world, Pacific Journal, it was down to, I think the editor said, "Did you prove the theorem?" Of course I proved it. He thought it was such a good proof. Did you prove it? No, AI proved it. Yeah, it did. Yeah, but it wasn't around at that time. So the case concerns the separation of powers, democratic constraint, and institutional integrity, issues that resonate far beyond Ireland. If you believe these questions deserve careful legal examination, I would ask you to consider supporting my GoFundMe campaign. Now, I really need help here, and people sort of look at me and say, I'm very rich. No. I mean, this case has taken every penny, and it really, it's extraordinarily difficult. Very few people would have, the sticking power, the determination, but also the curiosity, the intellectual power to understand the complexities here, because and then the endurance to keep narrowing it and breaking it down. That's a huge process, and that in itself is like, I think I would have done like 4 or 5 PhDs in the time I've started this legal work. So anyway, forget about that. It's just that if you could help me with my GoFundMe campaign, that would be brilliant. But I'd also be very curious to hear anybody tell their story. Now, I don't have to mention any names, but with conflict of interest in their lives, where they came across it and how it impacted them or their lives. Just share their stories of how, the appearance of conflict of interest affected something in their lives. Because I think if the more we know about it, the better it is for for people to understand how harmful it is and how damaging it can be to people's lives. So constitutional litigation requires significant resources, as I've outlined. Your support, whether through contribution or by sharing the campaign. Now, the podcast Politics and War, where Miss Maura Kennedy interviews me, is doing very well. I think over 13,000 people worldwide are listening to it on Spotify and other platforms, iCast, Apple, so it is being listened to all around the world. But of course, we'd like more and more people to listen to it, and it is quite factual. I mean, it does give our side of the story, because we feel we have been, the press is not helping us for various reasons. Again, I feel the freedom of the press here is an issue. I am very much in favour of freedom of the press, but I haven't any control over that, and perhaps that might be something that could come out of this case, where there would be more freedom of the press within the limits of what's acceptable. I feel the press are being terribly constrained here in this case, but I don't know why. But I feel they're concerned about their welfare, their jobs, and they feel they have to. A lot of them are, feel they have to avoid this case for the moment. So this is perhaps it's unfortunate in some ways, but in other ways, not everybody likes a lot of media attention. Maybe the media attention is for the right time, but I mean, most other cases, I personally wouldn't like to be, in cases where my name was all over the papers every day of the week. No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't like that. But it's my work, not my name. That's the work that's important, not me personally. It's not about me. It's about the people. But that doesn't mean that that I'm not determined that this case is properly adjudicated upon, and I've done huge work here. That most litigants would not be able to do. That's as simple as that. The endurance, the intellectual power, the creative element is there as well, and the investigative power is huge. So I'm blessed with a huge brain, but it can sometimes be used against you. Unfortunately, that's the case. It is going to be used against you. Your brain and your intelligence can be used against you. So that's very unfortunate. So intellectualism can be used against a person. So that's very unfortunate. So particularly women. So the link is to GoFundMe. You see it on YouTube. I'd be really appreciate for any support at all. And thank you for your continued support. And I will update you once again once the Byrne judgment has been delivered. Now, I feel that in terms of the Supreme Court matter, I have, I'm moving on to conflicts of interest, and I'm looking at a particular mathematical problem, which I think it's brilliant. The binomial distribution applied to the county council. It's a phenomenal insight that I don't know where I just get a brainwave. So I'm working on that theorem now. So that's I might get some other mathematicians to help me finish it off, or add a few elements to it as well. So so that's what I'm doing now. So thank you very much for listening. And yeah, I'm happy now with the Supreme Court communication. I feel it has kind of taken the anxiety away, and I wish Mr. Byrne only the best in his case. Absolutely the best. He's a very nice, decent, helpful man, very interested in quantum physics, and a very good person, and I wish him the absolute best. And of course, my case is very complex, and I suppose if I was 3 Supreme Court judges, I'd run a mile from it. I would, but that's I'd run a mile in one case, and in another 3 judges, I'd be delighted to get the case, so I'd be thrilled. But I've done an awful lot of the work there I've done a huge amount of the work for them. I can tell you, they wouldn't get a student as good as me. But it's not about me, as I've said. It's a global issue, but it's particularly about the ordinary Irish citizen. The citizen, as I say, that gives everything, seems to be giving everything and getting nothing in return, and really that is not fair. It is simply not fair, and it is not getting better. So things are going to have to change.